Welcome to A Course in Miracles 365, Awakening to Love. I'm your host, Tomás Garza, and as you can see today, we have a very special guest here. And this is going to be a lot of fun. Joining me today is Deb Goldberg. Now, Deb is an author of several books, and you may recognize her as a former show host here on Enlightened World Network. She is back and excited to be joining us right here on Restream again. So, Deb, welcome.
Thank you so much, Tomas. I'm so excited to be here with you today. So thanks for asking.
No problem. This is really a lot of fun. And guys, as you've been tuning into the show, you know that I've had a few guests on, and I like to do this because it's really fun to see everybody else's perspective with a course, because this is a spiritual text and a thought system that is so powerful and so beneficial for so many people. And it's fun to hear a different voice than just mine, right? Yes, I say it is. So as we're sharing this out, thank you all for joining us as always. And feel welcome to leave comments, questions. Thank you for all of your shares, all of the likes, all the hearts. We love it. What we don't get to hear on the live stream this morning, Deb and I will get to after the fact. And if you're catching the replay, welcome. All right, so as we share this out, Deb, this is exciting. It's been a while since you've been here on the network, hasn't it?
It has been probably since August of 2020.
Okay. Yeah, I love this. And now you used to have a show here. Now, when you had your show here on EWN, how often did you actually bring up or talk about A Course in Miracles on your show?
It didn't really come up. I would do other things, and where I might talk about A Course in Miracles, maybe a lesson or subject matter of it. But I was mainly geared to divine relationships. It was called Divine Relationship Recovery, and so I spent more time of actually listening to God, what God wanted me to share, but it coincides so much.
Yes.
With A Course in Miracles.
It really does. And that's one thing I'm finding with this live stream is there are people that tune in regularly that are not students of the course, but they still get so much out of it because the course material is universal. Now, where did you and when did you find A Course in Miracles in your life?
Sure. I had just moved to Florida Keys in 2016, and I was supposed to do a workshop somewhere. And I thought, well, I'm going to go into this building and see what it's like when other people are having workshops. And it just so happened that there was A Course in Miracles going on the night before. And I thought, well, I'm intrigued. I like miracles. I don't know what it's about, but I'm gonna come in and see what's going on here and what A Course in Miracles is. And I met some lovely people that became very good friends and still are, and that I still study A Course in Miracles with. But they sat me down and they said, it's a study book, and that it was dictated by Jesus. And I thought, this is really interesting timing, because I had just received 3 books from Jesus myself. And as I read the chapter with him for that day and understood what the book was about, there was a lot of similarity into what was in the Course in Miracles book to what I was being dictated to.
Okay. And now this is interesting that you'd received 3 books from Jesus shortly before this, right? I mean, it was all very compact in terms of timing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it was, that happened in a 6-week course of getting a book every 2 weeks. And, but it fell right in line with stepping into that study group of A Course in Miracles. And I thought the timing was, and it always is, it's no coincidence.
No, Definitely, there's no such thing as that. So, what was your first reaction or your first hit when you were introduced to the course?
Uh, it felt validating for me to have something else written that really was coinciding with what I was learning, and and it was also meeting a lot of wonderful people that were spiritually awoke and on the same page. One of the first things that had problems with was reading the text, because there
Mhm.
seems like there's a lot of double negatives and it's hard to read on your own. And I believe on some point it's probably made that way, so you have to study it as a group. It's not easy to digest on your own.
Mhm. Yes, and for those of you that aren't familiar with the text, it takes words and concepts that have a slightly different meaning, or maybe a completely different meaning in common parlance, and recasts them. And it can seem cryptic. It can seem a little weird, I think, at times. But so, Deb, you had that experience then. Did you start right out studying this in a group then?
Yes, they met every week, and so we would meet, in the evening a week. It was once a week group, and we would take a chapter, or we kind of jumped around. I know everybody does it differently, of not reading it in order. So my favorite part is the teacher's manual,
Oh, okay. Mhm.
and it was funny. I found some things where I didn't really want to read the lessons. I went through all of this resistance stuff with it. And at the same time, really I think what's really important is when people just start into learning and studying the book, it doesn't make sense to them.
Mhm.
And it's sort of like you have to keep absorbing what you're reading, and as you go along in time, the concepts just start, you just start to understand them. But when you first start, aside from Jesus teaching me, I was not awake at all. Like, I woke up in 2014. So I didn't understand any of this. It was like a very sudden awakening.
Hmm.
And so I could see that other people that might start with the book, that really don't have any background in spiritual awakening, uh, it's really hard to understand. And some of the things that it says are difficult to take in. That it's an illusion, and
Okay.
uh, there's so much. So I think it really takes time for you to, and I heard this over and over again from the group, is just keep reading, and just over time it will settle in, and it does.
Okay. Right.
And
And yeah, that it's my experience that over time it settles in and it begins to make sense. Now, what part stands out to you as being what was the most challenging, I guess, for you to grasp at first?
well, probably I would say 98% of it coincided what I was hearing from Jesus. But for
Hmm.
me, what I was getting hung up in is the way that we came to be,
Oh,
and the
yeah.
way that we were describing it in the book. The way that, because you can be really subjective with the book in the way that you interpret it.
Mhm.
Many different people have different interpretations of what, each lesson or the chapter of what you're reading. So I think for me it was, how this all got started. I had some conflict with that, of, and I just actually came to a point of recognizing that basically they're all myths of how we came to be, because we don't understand the expansiveness of God.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. That is one that is really quite common because people have the tendency with our logical minds, don't we, to say, okay, when did this happen? When did exactly did the separation occur? I must know. And yeah, that's a very very common one. And now, how long was it then when you sat with the material? How long was it before you really began to get it? Would you say?
I think I was starting to get it because of the lessons Jesus was giving me, and this was validating it. But but
Hmm.
but what I learned that is, so it's been about 5 years I've been studying. Each year it just is deeper and deeper understanding. Your understanding becomes more expansive, deeper, uh, and it continues to do that. I
Hmm.
start to see something in a completely different way than the way I read it last year. So
Yeah.
you don't get tired of reading the same thing because you read it differently each time you read it.
Mhm. I can relate to that. It's like reading your favorite novel over and over again. It doesn't matter that it's the 15th time you notice something different, or seeing a movie that you really enjoy. Yeah, similar. So now, Deb, you've mentioned a couple things that I want to ask you about, and that is that you felt you were being guided to study this in a group. So if you could, would you tell us about how you feel that has impacted your understanding? Why a group dynamic?
Well, there's a facilitator,
Hmm.
and so that's somebody who's been studying the book that can help you relate to it in the way that it was meant to, versus you trying to subjectively listen and
Yeah.
figure out on your own. And it brought us together a lot. Um, and it gives you the ability to listen to other people's ideas. So you keep expanding your mind, and you keep learning how other people feel different, or how they struggle with the same concepts that you do.
Yes.
And so we have great conversations in our group, of where we'll read something and we don't understand exactly or one person's going this way and another person's going that way, and so it just rounds out all the learning, and how different actually each of us are, and how we apply the message that we're getting. It also allowed me to get really stronger in my belief system,
Okay.
because sometimes it challenged me, and maybe something I had a conflict with in what I was reading and what I've been taught. And so it also actually allowed me to have more confidence in knowing what I know, if
Okay.
that makes sense.
It does.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah, it does. Confidence, clarity, certainty. These are the words that people have often referenced to me, and that actually speaks to my experience. Now, are you still studying with the same folks that you started out with?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Almost the same group. We've had a few people come in and out,
Hmm.
but it's the same core group, and some of them have been studying for 30 years,
Oh,
and so their knowledge is and wisdom is wonderful.
mhm.
And these are people that I became very good friends with. And it becomes not only a time to study together, it becomes a time for me to be with my community, my friends. And it also reminds me to keep focusing on God,
Okay.
and that we do that together. And so that's very meaningful.
Hmm. Yeah, it really is. And those of you that have studied the course are likely to have run across just such a group or a study group, or there are webinars, seminars, all kinds of things that really emphasize the togetherness, the fact that minds are joined, which is one of the central principles of a course. So, Deb, I'm curious in your experience, because it's been 5 years since you've been studying this, what are some of the most fabulous pieces of a course in your experience? I mean, what have you really, really resonated with and enjoyed?
hmm like I said, the teacher's manual is my favorite part of
Okay.
it. And I love the there. I don't know if they're mantras. Like I have one open right now.
Oh,
Teach only love, for that is what you are. Like
mhm.
all these little sayings that really resonate and stay in my mind, which I guess are kind of like what the lessons are in a way. But there's poetry throughout the book, and it's not just in little sayings. There's just beautiful, it's a beautiful dedication to who you are and what God is. And so I really love the poetry throughout it. I don't know that everybody sees that, but that's the way that I take it.
Mhm.
And I just love the validation of of how to bring the concepts together and really anchor them in, because it repeats.
Yes.
There's a lot of repeating throughout the book, which I understand totally. It's like you're having to convince yourself of who you are because you're so far away from that belief system.
Right. Yes. And we're all adult learners, so we naturally need to hear things 55 different times.
Mhm.
Perhaps time 56 will be the charm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I love that I can open the book at any place and it's exactly where I need to be, which happens with a lot of things. But the lesson that I usually have each week when I come to group, I love that it's just always speaking to me and trying to, like I said, each year I can take the information in a much more expansive way and hear it in a way that really helps.
Yes. Yeah, I think that that's among many things with the course that's worth repeating is when you go through it again. If you get all the way through, say, the workbook or the manual, it's not the end. And in fact, it even says that this is
Mhm,
the beginning. And we do it again and find that our knowledge and our understanding deepens and deepens.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, yours clearly has.
Yeah, and it was funny. I just had another thought of what something that was hard for me when I started. So I'm Jewish, so
Mhm.
I'm not. The book talks about the Holy Spirit, and when Jesus woke me up and gave me all this information, it was not couched in a religious form. There was no religion at all. It is all about universal love. So so when I would read the book and I'm like, what's all this stuff about Holy Spirit? What, I mean, I can understand it from a intellectual standpoint that it's the spirit of God, but those are kind of things that if you're not maybe um, understanding because of the religion that you are, it kind of can feel like there's some biblical Christian stuff through the book,
Right.
even though it's not Christian. It uses some of the same terminology, so that threw me a little bit when I first started too.
Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting, and you raise a very interesting point because it is, and it does say it's universal in theme and application, yet it does use Christian Christian terminology like
Mhm.
God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit. So that is something that I think if someone has been raised in the Judeo-Christian tradition and did not have a good experience with that, that can be something that might serve as well a thing to look at. Let's put it that way.
Mhm.
Yeah. Now, Deb, I'm curious because you've been studying this for 5 years and you've had layer upon layer of deeper understanding. What would you say to somebody that's curious? Because there are a lot of people that are curious about A Course in Miracles and maybe they're not sure whether to dive into it or not. What would you say to these folks?
I would say that it's important to study with a group.
Okay.
I mean, there's plenty of books out there that have made it easier to read A Course in
Mhm.
Miracles,
Yes.
and that you can read on your own. But you're also looking for a sense of community,
Mhm.
of like-minded people to study with. And now, you could do it online. It makes, if you can't find it where you live, because there's no group where I live,
Okay.
um, I do it online with a group. And I would say to be patient with what you're reading and not to get frustrated with it, because I would get frustrated at first because of um, it's not easy to read.
No. Yeah.
um, and certain parts aren't. Other parts are easier to read, but it gets easier and easier and easier to read and interpret as you go along. So not to get frustrated, um, and to have an open mind,
Right.
because something that this book keeps reminding me is that what this book is about is to have peace.
Mhm.
And I didn't get that when I first started to with the group. I didn't realize that that's what it was. I just was like, what's going on, and I want more information and I want to understand. But the truth is, this is all about um, having peace in your life
Okay.
by understanding divine truth.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's all about peace. And the wonderful thing, I think, for a lot of people is that there are these groups available. So again, Deb and I would each have you look into what is available in your local area. And of course, there are a number of resources online. Well, honestly, to put in a plug for the network, including this live stream. So you can definitely catch all of this and other past episodes are on Enlightened World Network's YouTube channel. So that is a place where you can catch all of the past episodes, including all of my guests.
Mhm.
Deb, like yourself. So, Deb, anything else before we wrap up that you would like to say to the folks tuning in here live or on the replay?
Sure. There is something else that we do in our group, which makes it very helpful. And there's a website called Pathways to Light, or Pathways of Light, and and you can download the lesson for that day, and it's interpreted. It is the chapter or whatever. You could go to any chapter, and it interprets it. Somebody else is interpreting it for you, and so we will read a chapter and then read Pathways Light interpretation, and it just brings the chapter together in a much more uh, concisive way to understand it.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. And thank you for reminding me of that because I haven't been to visit that site for some time. But again, for those that are curious, it's Pathways of Light.
Mhm.
And that is it's a great resource, as you've said. Well, Deb, it's a very short live stream, but I've really enjoyed and learned hearing from you and your perspective on all of this. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
You're so very welcome. It's great to be here with you.
Well, and guys, this has been Deb Goldberg. And again, thank you for all of your likes, the hearts, the shares, and comments. Deb and I will get to them here later on in the day. And if you're catching us on the replay and you have questions about A Course in Miracles or about spirituality in general, reach out to Deb and ask, because she has written many books, hosted a show, been on the radio. She knows what she's talking about and has lived, as you've seen, the experience of going a layer deeper all the time, which is what it's all about. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in here. This has been A Course in Miracles 365. We'll see you all again soon.